So first I'm going to tell a story about Pam Carlson. A few weeks ago, Pam called me and said, oh, I'm lining up the summer, and we have a few dates. You know, I like to come once a year and talk to you all, and usually I have stuff going on in my head, and I've been thinking about it a long time, and I'm like, yes, let me come and explore this with you. And Pam said, and we have Father's Day. And I'd really like to hear what you'd say about Father's Day. And I thought, so would I. So I took the challenge on, and I put my other thoughts in a little place somewhere for a while. And I'm here today on Father's Day, which is a little ironic, as my wife and I don't have a father in our family, and our children don't have a father per se. And we've always come up with the conundrum of what do we do on Father's Day, but that's okay. You know, it's a pause that makes you think about how you are in the world and how you're constructed in the world. So what I want to do today is talk about father, not the person of papa, dad, daddy, da, the caregiver and the nurturer that some of us may have experienced or are to our children. I want to talk about father. And the history of Father's Day, which I did a small recount, is recent. It came about after Mother's Day, and Mother's Day, let us be reminded, was created out of the carnage of the Civil War. Created by mothers and wives, Northerners, Southerners, black, white, rich, poor, who, seeing their loved ones destroyed on a battlefield, said, stop. It was a protest. It became sentimentalized, and out of that sentimentality, Father's Day arose. So we can set that piece aside for today. I'd like to set it aside. And I want to ask something that is, for me, an unanswerable question. How do we handle the paradox of individualism and tribalism and oneness? Our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every human being, and our last principle, the unity of everything. Can we hold those competing ideas in a virtual Schrodinger's box where both are true? First, to just let you know, Schrodinger's box is a thought experiment. I love that concept because I like to think. And Schrodinger said that if you had a box and you couldn't see in it, and you had a cat in that box, and you had some kind of poison that could kill that cat, and you looked at the box, at one time you didn't know if the cat was alive or dead. It was both. And holding that in your head is a hard tension, that something can be both. And yet we get challenged to do that in our daily lives and other ways. And so I want to consider these ideas as part of our own Schrodinger's box. First of all, I brought my good old Bible from 1970, and I said, what is the role of the begats in the Bible? Begats as fathers, lists, and lists. And I'm telling you, I only read to verse 10 of 4 chapters. In that one, in Chronicles, that's the one place. And in the New Testament story, we hear about Jesus, who was born in Bethlehem, where his parents had come to register him, saying that he was in the right list of begats. Because the prediction of him in the Old Testament was that he had to be born in the city of David, and that's where they went. And those can be very limiting, begats. As I looked a little further and read some other people's ideas about it, what they really do is they designate tribes. And tribes who see each other as separate, vying for the resources, limited as they were, that God offered, the blessings, and tribes who are set up against each other. And begat and begotten serve to separate people, to put people outside, and to limit where you are and who you are and how you interact in the universe. There may be times when tribalness helps you to survive, but tribalness and living in tribalness every day separates us. And if we don't think that it's happening now, consider if you live in a red state or a blue state. That's a tribe. And that's a tribe that limits who else is living next door to you and what the possibilities are. And so even the book of Genesis in the first chapter begins with a list of Adam's begats, tribal from the beginning. And many people in our culture today and around the world continue to read that and list and think about it. Which tribe am I in? And how do I stand inside my tribe and not acknowledge the tribe outside? So Father here, generativity is distinct from care and compassion and the things that we might associate with dads today. And beyond the begats, there is a truth, however, that I believe we all seek an origin story. And once I had to tell my son, who went to school, he started as a freshman at Xavier University in Cincinnati, a very Catholic college. And because my son is a last minute, I get to it kind of person, he neglected to register for his freshman courses. And when he could register for the courses, oh my goodness, he had philosophy and theology. And I thought, oh, this will be rich. And sure enough, he came home for his first little weekend, and he was hollering, "Why didn't you tell me this?" I'm like, what? And he spoke to my wife, Corinne, first. "Why didn't you tell me this stuff about the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit? What is that? And why is that? And you didn't tell me about this." Well, and I said to him, yes, in fact, we had told you about that, and I taught that class in your Sunday school. And your friends were all sitting in the corner, you all jibber-jabbering together, so that kind of just went right over you. So, you know, we'd made an attempt to teach you all of that. And then I thought, how do you explain this? And I thought more broadly that every religious tradition really is set up to explain three things. Where do we come from? How do we act when we're here? And what happens afterwards? In every tradition, you can find that. And you can find aberrations of it, and you can find rules about it, and other things. But if we go back to that, where do we come from? What is our origin story? The begats are origin stories. People feel comfortable because they have origin stories. And why now are origin stories really popular? 23andMe and Ancestry have helped us to look at origin stories, discover some wild secrets, and think about where do we come from. And I want to hold that up a little because my own origin story is part of this today. Because as an adoptee, I was told when it came time to do the familiar family tree, oh, you're what we are. You're Czech and Italian, first-generation immigrants. All right, and I was a kid, I accepted that, and I moved forward with that. I'm none of that, which is kind of funny, although culturally I'm some of that. And years later, as I found my birth family, and I found out what our origin story was, I thought, well, there you go. Okay, so I'm Swedish and I'm Irish, and some Scottish and some this and that. That's what we knew. And then we did 23andMe, and oh boy, here you go now. Where in the world is this person from? There's this cousin in here that we can't identify. Like, who is this? And because I have a very, very talented niece who can do genealogies so well, she kept on it like crazy. And she discovered that, in fact, my birth grandmother, was pregnant when she married our grandfather. And there's an entire lineage of people out there that we didn't know about. And it turns out that they are French-Canadian. They are from 1604, and they came here originally with Samuel de Champlain. And I went, oh, this must be why, since I'm a little kid, I wanted to go to Nova Scotia. It's like my dream. And I would posit that many of you have had wonderings and dreams about your origin stories. And our origin stories are important, but they are not all we are. And they are not all who we should be. We should not be in silos of origin. And I say should, and I really do believe that. I think that there is another fundamental truth, that we are all connected to each other. And we are all connected to the entirety of the universe. And when I think about the entirety of the universe, I always say it breaks my brain. I can't think about what's out there. My brain can't contain that. And there are wonderful people who can contain that. And I'm not a scientist, and in fact, all through high school and college, I avoided anything to do with physics because I thought, oh, it's math, and I can't do that. But as I've gotten older, I've learned about how other people articulate what I might intuit. And they do thought experiments and thought ideas and thought processes to come at theories of how the universe works. And then they work on figuring those theories out. But it's nothing new to have this intuition. The naturalist John Muir said that when we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe. And I imagine this is a thread, that everything just comes together in the universe. And that's John Muir many years ago. And Einstein said energy can't be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to another. And then Nikola Tesla, who said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. I want to ask the question today, what if love is energy, frequency, and vibration? If vibration is the amplitude or intensity of energy, the higher the vibration, the more powerful the energy. If love is energy, and we create more vibrations, and we raise the frequency, is the energy become more powerful? Now, many seek certainty and how can we live with uncertainty? There's a thing called quantum uncertainty, and I'm sure someone will come later and correct me because I might not have the entire picture. I'm a learner. But it says that for things that are waves, we cannot know the speed of the wave and its location at one time. So we have math formulas that say if I know the speed of the train, I can figure out in time where it's going to be located. But quantum physics says that's not really true. That the speed and the location are always going, moving around, just like that, going. And because of that, something can be located in 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 places at once. Wow. It sort of breaks my brain, but inside my heart, I get that. That we have the capacity to be here, there, everywhere, part of everything at once. And how do we take up the challenge of living in that belief when so much of our culture, so much of our lives is so linear, when it tells us that our belief is not energy, that our belief is a list of begats, a list to rule red or blue states? And if subatomic particles, which is what the tiniest particles are called, can behave like waves in the quantum world, and if the subatomic particle is love, then can we generate more love? Can we be the factor that generates more and more love as we are in the universe? And one of the things that people say about uncertainty principle means that nothing is possible because everything's uncertain. But there are possibilities. It can, in fact, be looked at. We can look at possibilities. We can look at where things are and how they move and how we move and who we are and what is our energy today and what do we bring with us today and who do we want to be today and who do we see in the other? Who do we see in the, thank goodness, not flying in the window cicada? What do we see in all these parts of the universe? And what is the string that brings them together? And I think in our very complex and broken world, the only thing that can bring us together is love. And when I was writing the title for the sermon, I put down the rainbow connection. When I was a kid, and we'd be driving around, You know how when you see the clouds, and sometimes you see the light coming down from the clouds, these light streams? Well, because I had been taught that God was in heaven somewhere up there in a cloud, I thought the light streams coming down were God. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. They're over there, but they're God. And then as I became an adult and I learned that that wasn't really true, I thought, how else do I experience sometimes the magnificence of the energy of the universe? And I know how rainbows are formed. I know the science of it. But I am always stunned by the presence. I don't know how many of you can go out after a storm and think, oh, I think the light's just right. And when you look, you see the rainbow. Or maybe you're driving or walking and all of a sudden, oh, there it is. And it's this amazing idea of all these particles coming together at one point in one way and forming something magnificent that then disappears. And where does it go? It's in us. We've seen it. It's in our eyes. All those particles are in our eyes. It's in our vision, and we take it with us. And so that's why the beauty of the rainbow is even more relevant than the loveliness of finding out on 23andMe that I have ancient connections and what they are, or that other things of our origin stories help us to understand ourselves. But it is really and truly, how do we connect with others outside of ourselves? That's important. And it's not easy, and it may not even be possible to hold these thoughts together in a box. It may not work for us. It may not work for you. It takes for me a lot of practice. Mary, do you need some water? But I think that the only way to continue living is to live in the paradox, to not try to resolve it and solve it, to keep living in it. Years ago, when I started reading Shakespeare, I love Shakespeare because it's always a paradox. This is a good person and the bad person, and the good is bad and the bad is good. Whoa, what does that mean? And how do you hold that thought in your head? And what do you do with that? And so I'm inviting us all today to move to the respect, and even beyond the respect for the independent web of all existence, into living in the interdependent web of all existence, united in the vibration of the subatomic particles of love. Blessed be. And now, if technology works well, because my other son taught me how to do this, does everybody have a copy of the Rainbow Connection?